Before the morning light even touched the runway, Captain John Mitchell, a decorated veteran who once faced enemy fire without flinching, found himself reduced to a nameless passenger when a trembling boarding agent ripped his pass in half. Humiliation burned hotter than any battlefield wound as he stood there, uniformless and exposed, the weight of medals on his chest rendered invisible. In that crushing moment, the sky's promise of freedom turned to ash, and the man who had conquered fear now grappled with a shattering question. Could honor alone carry him through an indignity so profound? Tonight's flight will prove that sometimes the deepest battles are fought on the ground, and the scars they leave cut far deeper than any combat scar. Before diving into this gripping tale, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch more inspiring stories like this one. The first rays of dawn slipped through the high glass walls of Logan International, painting the polished floors in pale gold. A hush hovered in the concourse, partly from the hour, partly from the promise of a new day. Only the steady hum of escalators and the distant rumble of luggage carts broke the silence. On gate C-32, a solitary figure adjusted her crisp navy blue uniform, smoothing the creases in her skirt as if ironing out the knots in her own mind. Emily Hart inhaled slowly, tasting the faint scent of fresh coffee that drifted from a nearby kiosk. She ran a fingertip across the silver name badge pinned above her heart. Emily, it read, but inside, she felt more like always a step behind. She'd arrived 3 hours early, habit, nerves, or perhaps both. The early morning chill still clung to her, though she'd already shed her coat. Outside these walls, the air would be cold and gray, but here everything shimmered with possibility. Her reflection in the glass wall showed eyes too wide for someone who'd survived 2 years of transatlantic flights. Dark circles hugged the sockets, reminders of late nights, grading assignments for the online writing class she'd promised herself she'd finish. Between polishing silverware trays and ushering sleepy travelers to their seats, she dreamed of another life, one where words flowed from her pen more easily than boarding passes slid through scanners. Tonight she'd have to grade at least 5 essays before her shift began again tomorrow. Behind her, the departure board flickered, Flight 407 to Dallas, now boarding. Emily forced her shoulders down, channeling the calm professionalism her trainer had drilled into her. She unfolded the neatly stacked boarding passes in her hand. Business class, middle seat. She ticked off the boxes, mentally her breath steady. Then she saw the man. He stood just beyond the rope line, tall and broad-shouldered, draped in a perfectly tailored leather jacket, his silver hair cropped close. His uniform wasn't the maroon and gold she wore. It was crisp white with 4 gold stripes across each shoulder. Lead pilot. Her pulse quickened. She wondered for a moment whether she recognized him. Pilots usually slipped quietly through the crew lounge, but this man carried himself differently. The precise tilt of his chin, the faint tremor in his jaw, as if he were masking something. She sensed a tension there, a story behind those gray eyes. Beneath the airport's antiseptic lights, his dark skin glowed warmly, and she felt a small spark of admiration, an acknowledgement of battles fought, both in skies and on the ground. Emily stepped forward with the confidence she'd practiced in front of her bathroom mirror for weeks. "Good morning, sir," she said, voice clear. She raised her scanner and held out her hand. The man offered his pass. She studied the name, John Mitchell. It felt familiar, but that could be her imagination. John Mitchell, a name as common as hers. Her finger hovered over the tier line. Her palm felt hot against the plastic. In that split second, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Did he look older than the veteran she'd once seen in a documentary? The one with medals pinned to his chest, scars on his hands. Emily shook her head, pushing away the thought. Professionalism first, empathy second. She tore the pass, harder than she'd meant to, and handed half back. The scanner beeped approval. The man's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in confusion. He offered a polite nod and strode forward. Emily watched him go, her heart thumping unevenly. Something about him hadn't settled right. Her throat tightened as she tried to clear it. Behind her, her colleague, Monica, approached with a steaming cup of coffee. "Rough start," she asked, handing it over. Emily accepted it gratefully, lifting a tentative sip. The bitterness grounded her. "First time under these lights at 6 a.m.? Monica teased, pulling a strand of curly hair behind her ear. Monica's easy laughter was a lifeline, the reminder that she wasn't alone in this dance of uniforms and schedules. Yet, Emily couldn't shake the odd swirl of unease. She folded her lips around the rim of the cup and exhaled, watching her breath curl in the cold air. She couldn't ignore the way John Mitchell had held himself, like a man accustomed to command, yet suddenly stripped of it. Her thoughts drifted to her own father, a former sergeant who'd returned from service forever changed. His letters home spoke of duty and honor, but also of disappointment, the way gratitude sometimes evaporated in the glare of everyday life. Emily's chest tightened remembering those late-night conversations, the apology she'd never received for the harsh words he'd spoken when he came back broken. A final boarding announcement crackled overhead, its echo filling the silent spaces between guests. Emily squared her shoulders and set the empty coffee cup aside. She should focus on the passengers' smiles, nods, the small kindnesses, yet she couldn't help but glance again toward the gate's entrance. The man she'd served was gone, swallowed by the current of busy travelers. But in the hollow where he'd stood, the air still seemed charged, as though the storm he carried had yet to pass. The boarding line dwindled, and Emily allowed herself a moment to breathe. She counted in her head, 1, 2, 3 until it settled. A calmness like a fragile glass formed around her. She reminded herself, be kind, be precise, be present. Then she clicked her tongue softly and gathered the remaining passes. A new wave of passengers approached, smiling children, tired businessmen, one elderly couple holding hands. Emily greeted each with the practiced warmth of someone who believed in small mercies. As she tore, scanned, and smiled, a quiet determination grew in her chest. This morning was just the beginning. Somewhere beyond the runway lights, beyond the cramped cabin she would soon step into, lay the opportunity she'd been craving, a chance to confront her own assumptions, to learn the stories hidden behind faces, uniforms, and boarding passes. And perhaps, if she had the courage, to find forgiveness for the mistakes she carried herself. When the last passenger had hurried through, and the line was empty, Emily slipped her badge back onto her lapel, gathering her composure like a cloak. She glanced down the corridor toward crew waiting. In a few minutes, she would stride into the belly of the plane and greet strangers as though they were old friends. But she carried with her now the echo of a name, John Mitchell. She didn't yet know his story, but somehow she sensed it would change hers. In that moment, as the sun rose full and brilliant above the tarmac, Emily Hart felt both the weight of her own expectations and the soft stirrings of something new, an unfolding narrative that would test her, break her, and perhaps define her. She inhaled again, tasting the promise of flight, of truth waiting in the wings. The story was just beginning. The late morning sun had climbed higher, warming the concourse with a gentle glow that softened the sharp edges of steel and glass. Emily Hart slid her coat from its hook in the crew lounge and draped it over her arm. Her shift had paused for a quick break. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with reminders of essays due and texts from her roommate asking her to pick up milk. She tucked the phone away. Outside, Flight 407 to Dallas was delayed. Nothing out of the ordinary, but Emily couldn't shake a restlessness that felt like static under her skin. She stepped onto the jet bridge and was greeted by the familiar smell of recycled air and the faint hum of the engines. The cabin lights glowed softly, illuminating rows of navy blue seats trimmed in gold. Emily offered a small smile to the lone passenger waiting at the front, a woman clutching a paperback novel. But her eyes darted toward the back. She needed the challenge, the moment when everything shifted. A murmur rose from the rear rows. Someone had dropped a bag, or perhaps there was a child crying. Emily's shoes clicked against the aisle as she approached, her uniform skirt swaying with each step. She heard the low, urgent voice of a man, clear, measured, and tense. Then she saw him. He stood in the center of the aisle, knuckles white around the handle of a worn leather briefcase. His posture was rigid, his gaze fixed on the attendant at the back of the plane. The woman was young, jittery, probably new. She crumpled the boarding pass in her hand and glanced up at the man as tears bloomed in her eyes. Emily's heart clenched. She hurried forward. "Is everything all right?" she asked, the voice of a calm anchor in the waterlogged cabin. The man looked at her, and for the first time she noticed the medals pinned just above his heart on his faded green jacket. Bronze stars and campaign ribbons, silent witnesses to battles she could only imagine. His eyes, dark and haunted, flicked from the attendant to Emily. "My boarding pass," he said, mouth tight. It wasn't accepted." The attendant sobbed, holding out the ticket like a white flag. "I'm so sorry, sir. I tore it by mistake." Emily bent to examine the fragments. Her stomach churned when she recognized the name printed on the pass, John Mitchell. The same name she'd scanned that morning, the same broad shoulders she'd watched walk away, the same voice she'd thought belonged to a pilot heading to the cockpit. Only now, seeing him here in civilian clothes, she realized she'd caught only half the truth. "Sir," she said softly, "that's not how it should be." The veteran's gaze locked on Emily's. A storm rumbled behind his eyes, and something in his face crumpled. Shame, anger, something that felt like betrayal. Emily laid a steady hand on his arm. "Let me help," she said. She rose and called back toward the attendant station, her voice firm but gentle. "Kathy, get me another boarding pass. John Mitchell, Flight 407 to Dallas." Kathy, the new attendant, wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded, fumbling in her pocket for her spare stack. Emily guided John toward her station near the front, moving him away from prying eyes and murmurs of the other passengers. She unfolded her own boarding pass printer, fingers working quickly as she typed his name and flight number. She recognized the confusion on his face. He'd expected his pilot's uniform to speak for itself, but here he was, reduced to paperwork. When the new pass slid from the printer's slot, Emily tore along the line and handed him his half. She watched as relief washed over him. But it was mingled with something colder, a question unanswered. He blinked, searched her eyes, and for a fleeting moment their gazes met, two people grasping at fragments of understanding. Then he bowed his head and walked off, the weight of his briefcase swinging at his side. Emily stood there, her chest tight. She wanted to apologize again, to tell him that tearing his pass hadn't been an accident at all, but a sign of injustice. She wanted to share the memory of her father, the letters, the nights he'd come home distant and tired. But she only watched as he disappeared down the aisle, her heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and dread. Moments later, the captain's voice echoed through the cabin, crisp and clipped. "Flight 407 to Dallas is ready to depart. Please take your seats." Emily returned to her post, stitching together a smile that hoped to convey reassurance. Still, her hands trembled. She folded her arms and leaned against the bulkhead, head bowed for just a second, and felt a single stray tear slip from her own eye. The flight proceeded with practiced ease. Emily moved through the cabin, greeting passengers, offering beverages, smoothing smiles onto their faces like invisible bandages. Yet every time she passed the row where John Mitchell now sat, seat 12A, she felt a charge in the air. He sat upright, briefcase on his lap, looking past the window at the tarmac where the wings sliced into the sky. Emily's reflection in the glossy window showed a woman caught between relief and regret. During the safety demonstration, Emily's voice rang out clear and confident. She demonstrated masks and exits, the choreography perfected through countless repeats. But her mind kept replaying the moment she'd torn the pass, the tremor in the attendant's voice, the flash of anger in John's eyes. She wondered what he'd seen when he looked at her, just another uniform, another cog in the machine, or something more. As the engines roared to life and the plane bucked forward, Emily pressed her back into the bulkhead. The ground fell away, and with it, a piece of her certainty. She gripped the rail and closed her eyes, counting 5. 1 for duty, 2 for kindness, 3 for honesty, 4 for courage, 5 for the chance at redemption. The cabin settled into a steady climb. Passengers whispered between themselves, delighted at the smooth takeoff. Emily glided down the aisle, distributing blankets and adjusting headrests. When she reached John's seat, she paused. He looked up, startled, as if he hadn't heard her approach. Emily offered him a blanket, her fingertips brushing the edge of his sleeve. "Would you like anything else, Captain Mitchell?" He blinked twice, as if surprised she knew his rank. The gold stripes on his shoulders were just visible beneath the lapel of his leather jacket. "Thank you," he said, voice low. "No, this is fine." She smiled and moved on, heart pounding. She realized she'd called him Captain. Not Sir, not Mr. Mitchell, but Captain. The title rolled from her lips easily, but it carried weight, authority, respect, identity. Had she recognized him, not as a passenger, but as her superior, or had something in his stance, his silent dignity, whispered the truth? Midway through the flight, the intercom crackled, and the lead pilot spoke, his voice rich and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've reached cruising altitude, and the weather ahead is clear. We're expected to land in Dallas in approximately 2 hours." His voice, echoed through the cabin, and Emily stiffened. She watched the passengers settle, scanning the rows, until her eyes met his through the clear plastic of the oxygen mask compartment. He sat there, unmasked, revealing the same haunted, strong face she'd looked into twice that morning. A hush fell over Emily. The realization struck her like turbulence. She had been the one to embarrass him twice, once as a gate agent and once as a flight attendant, never knowing the full story. The man she displaced so casually was the very person steering their journey through the sky. Her stomach lurched, guilt and fear intertwined in her chest. What would he do with this knowledge? Would he report her? Would he understand that the first mistake had been human error, the second born from empathy gone awry? She returned to the galley, her uniform suddenly too tight, her breathing shallow. Monica's familiar face hovered in the doorway. "You okay?" she asked, concerned with threading her voice. Emily blinked. I just realized something," she whispered. "The man I messed up, he's our captain." Monica's eyes grew wide. She stepped into the galley and closed the door behind her. "What do you mean?" Emily drew a shaky breath and explained the morning at the gate, the torn pass, the hesitation. Monica's expression shifted from confusion to alarm to sympathy. "You have to tell him," she said softly. "Go to the cockpit. Apologize." Emily shook her head, dread pooling in her stomach. She pictured the spotless paneled walls of the cockpit, the solemn faces behind the yoke. Would he want to see her there? She swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can." The intercom crackled again. "Cabin crew to cockpit, please," the voice said. Emily's heart hammered. The captain needed something. She squared her shoulders and moved through the narrow aisle, the world outside bright, white clouds against an endless blue. Each step felt heavy, weighted by the mistake she'd made and the secret she now carried. When she reached the cockpit door, she paused, palm inches from the release latch. Through the small window, she saw him, Captain John Mitchell, his profile calm, his hands resting lightly on the controls. She closed her eyes and whispered, "For honesty." Then she nodded to herself and pushed the door open. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Emily closed the gap and stood at the threshold, uniform crisp, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Captain Mitchell," she began, "I need to apologize. I made a mistake this morning at the gate. I tore your boarding pass by accident." He held up a hand, eyes searching hers. "I know," he said quietly. "I saw you. And I know you tried to help again." He paused, and Emily felt her breath catch. "You're a good flight attendant, Emily Hart." His tone was neither reproach nor pity, just honest acknowledgement. Mistakes happen. Relief and gratitude surged through her, and she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. I just want you to know I respect you, and I'm sorry for any trouble I caused." He offered her a small, understanding smile. "Thank you for telling me." He gestured to a seat beside the co-pilot. "Come in. Stay a while." Emily's chest filled with something she hadn't felt since she first stepped onto the tarmac, the beginning of trust. She crossed into the cockpit, heart pounding with the promise of an uneasy peace and the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same after this flight. The engines thrummed beneath her feet, carrying them onward into the unknown. And as she settled into the observer's seat, she realized the real journey, the one of truth and forgiveness, had only just begun. Emily Hart sat in the cockpit's observer seat, its leather cool against her skirt. Below her, the engine's steady hum felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that every decision here carried weight. Beside her, Captain John Mitchell guided the plane with quiet precision, his hands steady on the yoke. The co-pilot, Maria Santos, watched her instruments, nodding to John as they communicated in clipped radio codes. Emily felt like an intruder and an honored guest all at once. She cleared her throat softly. "Captain Mitchell," she began, her voice a low whisper so as not to disturb Maria's focus. "Thank you for letting me sit here." He glanced at her through the corner of his eye and offered a small smile. "You've earned your place," he said, his tone gentle. "How are you holding up?" Emily's fingers threaded together in her lap. "I'm surprised. I thought you might be angry." John shook his head. "I was disappointed, yes, but I know mistakes don't define us." His gaze drifted back to the instruments. "Tell me about your father." The question surprised her. She hadn't intended to share, yet something in his voice, a genuine curiosity, softened her defenses. She inhaled, tasting the sterile air mixed with faint traces of coffee from her last break. He was a sergeant in the army, tough on the outside, but he tried to hide his wounds. He came back from his last deployment changed, quieter, more distant. That's when I first learned how small words could hurt. John's shoulders eased. "I understand. The battlefield isn't just overseas. Sometimes it's inside a family." Silence fell between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Emily studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the slight crinkle at the corner of his eye when he smiled. She wondered how many storms he'd weathered beyond the ones he flew through. The intercom crackled. "Cabin crew to cockpit," Maria said, glancing at Emily. "We've got a situation back there." John nodded and reached for the intercom switch. "Go ahead, Maria." A tense voice replied. "Captain, there's a woman refusing to stay seated. She's claiming medical distress, but her paperwork seems off. She's in row 17. Emily felt a surge of sympathy. "I can help," she offered before John could respond. He looked at her thoughtfully. "Be careful. Keep me informed." Emily rose and stepped out of the cockpit. The galley door closed behind her with a soft click. In the aisle, Monica greeted her, eyebrows raised. "Row 17? Emily nodded. "I'm going to see what's happening." They moved down the cabin. Passengers watched with curiosity as Emily and Monica approached the disturbed row. A woman sat upright, clutching her purse to her chest, her face pale. She wore a satin scarf and designer glasses that perched precariously on her nose. "Please," she gasped, "I need water. And my medicine." Monica knelt beside her. "Of course. What medicine?" The woman's lip trembled. "Painkillers. I can't fly without them." Emily scanned the small, handwritten prescription clutching her bag. The dosage was illegible, the doctor's signature a messy swirl. "Ma'am," Emily said gently, "I need to verify your doctor's note before I can administer anything." The woman's eyes flashed anger and fear. "You're a monster," she spat. "I'm a mother. My children need me." Emily felt her chest tighten. She knelt as well, leveling her gaze with the woman's. "I understand you're scared, but giving you the wrong medicine could be dangerous." Something in the woman's posture shifted, barely perceptible, but Emily recognized the stance from her writing classes. Defense turned to defiance. She glanced back toward the galley. Monica's shoulders were stiff, ready to call for help. Emily stepped closer. "Is there someone I can call for you?" "Espouse a friend." The woman's lip quivered, tears springing. She leaned forward, voice soft. "My husband, he's not answering. He promised to book this flight for me. Promised. I don't know what to do." Emily's heart ached. She offered her hand. "What's his name? Maybe I can help connect you." The woman hesitated, then whispered, "David Jacobs." Emily nodded and rose. "Monica, can you check our manifest? Does that name appear as an emergency contact?" Monica left to retrieve her tablet. Emily stayed with the woman, offering a cool gaze and a tissue. The cabin lights hummed above, passengers quiet but watchful. Emily could feel the tension coil around her like a rope. 10 minutes later, Monica returned. "No record," she reported softly. "No Jacobs." The woman sank back, defeated. Emily sat beside her. "I'm sorry," she said. "Let's try calling another number?" The woman shook her head. Emily took out her phone. "May I?" She dialed the last number entered in the woman's contacts, a home number. The Lone Ranger went to voicemail. Emily left a message. "Ms. Jacobs, this is Emily Hart, flight attendant on Flight 407. Please call us." She ended the call and handed the phone back. The woman stared at the screen. "Why are you helping me?" Emily met her eyes. "Because behind every boarding pass, there's a person with a story." The woman's tears came then, quiet at first, then wrenching sobs. Emily placed an arm around her shoulders. "It's okay," she whispered. Back in the cockpit, John sensed the shift in cabin pressure before he saw the signal. He turned to Maria. "Emily's handling it." Maria nodded, and a calm settled over him. He returned his attention to the instruments, but his mind wandered to the woman in row 17, a stranger hurt alone. As the flight continued, Emily checked on the woman every few minutes. When she returned to the galley, Monica approached. "That woman's story, something isn't right." Emily frowned, recalling the glossy scarf and shaky hands. "I feel it too." She glanced down the aisle. The woman sat erect now, staring straight ahead, but her purse was gone. Emily's pulse quickened. "Tell John. I'll handle her." Monica hurried off. Emily smoothed her skirt and walked toward row 17. The woman's seat was empty. Panic nudged at Emily's throat. She peered into the next row, still empty. A dozen seats remained unoccupied. Emily's mind raced. Had the woman collapsed and been moved? Or had she vanished? She turned to the nearest passenger. "Excuse me, ma'am, did a woman in a scarf get up?" The passenger shook her head. "No, I don't think so." Emily swallowed. She hurried to the cockpit door, breathing hard, and knocked. Inside, John looked up. "She's gone," Emily said. "The woman, she disappeared." John's eyes narrowed. "Disappeared?" Emily nodded, voice trembling. "Her purse, too. She said her husband abandoned her, but I think something else happened." John rose, pulling on his headset. "Show me the security footage." Emily shook her head. "No, this flight doesn't have cameras." But she left behind her prescription note. She handed it to him. "It's fake, and I think she planned this." John studied the note, then met Emily's eyes. Why would someone do that? She bit her lip. To steal something, maybe from the cockpit, maybe from another passenger. I don't know. He took off his jacket and draped it on the co-pilot's seat. "Then let's find out. You and I." Emily's heart thumped. Together, they stepped back into the cabin, moving down the aisle as a single unit, captain and flight attendant, eyes sharp for the vanished passenger. John's presence beside her felt protective, yet it carried an undercurrent of challenge. A shared mission that transcended their earlier misunderstandings. Row after row passed. Emily's throat grew dry. She swallowed hard. At row 20, she stopped. "There." John peered across the aisle, where a man in a dark suit clutched a leather briefcase. He looked up, startled by their approach. Emily recognized him, the man who'd boarded after John that morning. The one she'd barely noticed. His briefcase, identical to John's, sat on his lap. Captain Mitchell squared his shoulders. "Sir, may I ask you a few questions?" The man's jaw clenched. "Why?" Emily stepped forward. "Ma'am." "Sorry, sir. We noticed you picked up a case that wasn't yours. It looks like you slipped it from row 17. The man's eyes flickered with guilt and anger. He rose abruptly, sending his seat rattling back. "That's none of your business." John's calm authority rippled through the cabin. "Actually, it is. We're in federal airspace." The man hesitated. He lashed the man's arms with his belt, wrestled the pouch free, then pressed his lips to the intercom. Flight attendants, secure the cabin. Guest disturbance at row 20. In the swirl of panic, Emily grabbed the pouch and opened it. Inside lay a single silver key, its teeth worn smooth. She stared at it confused. Why would someone risk so much for an unremarkable key? John rose, his face tight, with focus. He looked down at Emily, then at the key. That looks familiar. Emily's mind raced back to the safety card in the cockpit, where a similar key was sketched to open the emergency access panel. It's the cockpit key, she whispered. John's eyes widened. He wanted in. A shudder coursed through Emily. The betrayal they faced wasn't personal, it was professional, existential. Someone had tried to access the cockpit mid-flight, and she had nearly been collateral damage. He turned his gaze to her, voice low but fierce. Thank you for being vigilant. Emily's chest tightened. We need to secure that key. John nodded and swept her into action. Together, captain and flight attendant, they moved through the cabin, their bond forged in crisis. The tension crackled like static. Unspoken truths glimmered between them. Emily realized then that the real conflict had only just begun, and that every trust they built, every secret they uncovered, would test them both. The sky outside remained calm and blue, but inside the plane, the storm had broken, and neither Emily Hart nor John Mitchell would ever be the same. Emily sat on the jump seat in the galley, the stolen key heavy in her palm. Her thoughts spun around the terrifying image of a man lunging at her with that briefcase. She took a steadying breath, trying to focus on what John had said. He wanted in. But why? What was inside the cockpit worth stealing? Monica appeared at her elbow, carrying a tray of half-empty water glasses. Everything all right? She asked, her tone casual. Emily glanced up and forced a smile. Yes, just thinking. Monica offered a sympathetic nod and leaned closer. You did great back there, by the way. Nobody would have caught that guy, but you. Her praise warmed Emily's chest, and for a moment she believed in the bond they'd built. Then she remembered the strange details of that woman in row 17, the fake prescription, the frantic calls, the disappearance. Emily's gut twisted. Monica, she said softly, help me with something. She held out the key. Monica's eyes flickered as she took it, turning it over in her fingers. Emily watched her face for any sign of recognition, something more than polite interest. Monica shook her head. I've never seen that key before. She handed it back, and Emily tucked it into her pocket. She wanted to believe Monica, but doubt had settled like a stone in her stomach. Thanks, Emily said, and Monica walked away. As the galley door swung shut, Emily caught a glimpse of Monica's sleeve brushing against the wall. There, taped behind the metal panel, was a small, folded piece of paper. Emily's heart skipped. She waited until Monica had gone down the aisle, then crept forward and slipped her hand behind the panel. Her fingers closed on the paper. She pulled it free and unfolded it carefully. It was a boarding pass for Flight 407, printed in a shaky font on glossy paper. The name read John Mitchell, but the flight number was wrong. 508, not 407. Beneath it, in hurried scrawl, was a note. Tonight at 8 p.m. Hangar 3. Don't fail me. Emily's breath caught. Hangar 3. That was the private maintenance hangar where only crew and authorized technicians had access. And 8 p.m. was in 30 minutes, just after they landed in Dallas. She stared at the words, her mind racing. Monica had been hiding this. The fake medical emergency in row 17, the woman clutching that bogus prescription, had been a distraction, and the man with the briefcase was her accomplice, sent to steal the cockpit key. A cold realization swept over her. Monica was behind this. The colleague she trusted, the one who teased her with coffee and covered her back during the row 17 crisis. Monica had orchestrated every moment of confusion, every tear and plea. And why? To enable a breach of the cockpit, to steal something John Mitchell had stowed away after a flight, or perhaps to ruin him. Footsteps echoed down the aisle. Emily slipped the note into her pocket and straightened, smoothing her uniform as Monica returned. "All set?" Monica asked, giving her that same encouraging smile. Emily nodded, her mind spinning. As they neared the cockpit door, Monica touched Emily's arm. "John wants you in there again. Something about a radio check." Her voice was gentle, but Emily felt the sting of betrayal. She wanted to tell John immediately, but what if Monica was watching? What if the moment she called the captain she'd out herself? "On it," Emily said, and stepped inside the cockpit. John looked up, concerned in his eyes. Maria sat tense at the instruments, monitoring radio frequencies. "What's wrong?" John asked. Emily's lips pressed together. She needed proof before she accused Monica. She couldn't let a false charge derail everything. But timing was critical. If Monica succeeded that evening, the breach in Hangar 3 could cost lives, or at least cost John everything. "Captain," she said, voice low so Maria wouldn't overhear, "I found this." She extracted the folded note and laid it on his kneeboard. John unfolded it, his brow furrowing as he read. Maria leaned in. "Hangar 3, she murmured, eyes wide. "That's where our maintenance logs are kept." John's jaw tightened. He thumbed the key in Emily's pocket and met her eyes. "This is bigger than we thought." Emily nodded. "Monica's involved. She taped that note behind the panel in the galley." Maria's face blanched. I saw her fiddling with that panel earlier." John rose, pulling on his jacket and looping Emily's coat over his arm. "We're gonna need a diversion. I'll handle the cockpit. You two, find her and get that pass back." Emily swallowed. She'd never been one for confrontation, but now the betrayal had cut too deep. She and Maria slipped into the cabin together, moving quickly but quietly toward the galley. In the aisle, passengers stared at them, curiosity burning in their eyes. Emily focused on only one person, Monica, who was chatting with a group of business travelers near row 5. At her belt, tucked beneath her name tag, was the edge of that fake boarding pass. Maria cleared her throat. "Monica," she said. Monica turned, her smile faltering. "Is everything okay?" she asked, though Emily could sense the tension in her shoulders. Emily stepped forward, voice firm. "We need to see your boarding pass, really see it." Monica's breath hitched, and she held out a wallet. Emily nodded and took the laminated card. Flight 508, Captain John Mitchell. The gauge of her betrayal snapped into focus. Flight 508 wasn't even on this plane. It belonged to a different route, a different crew. "Why do you have this?" Emily demanded. Monica's lips trembled. She glanced down the aisle as if checking for eavesdroppers, then back at Emily. I don't know what you're talking about." Emily's heart pounded. She pulled the fake pass free and held it under Monica's nose. "Cut the act." Monica's cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes flicked to Maria, pleading. Maria glanced at Emily, silent support. "This hangar meeting," Emily said, voice low. "How did you know about it?" Monica's shoulders slumped. She ran a hand through her hair. It was supposed to be a quick handoff. I didn't think he'd need the pass until we landed." Emily's chest twisted. "Who is he?" Monica hesitated, then closed her eyes, as if steeling herself. "It's not John," she said. "It's his replacement on the next leg, Captain Rhodes. He's part of something illegal. Smuggling. This ring uses our flights to move goods." Emily's mind reeled. "So you were going to give him the pass so he could board here?" Monica nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "He gets in through the back door, transfers the cargo. No one suspects a thing." A low whistle from behind them made all three spin around. John stood in the galley doorway, arms folded over his chest, rage and hurt burning in his eyes. Monica's face crumbled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I thought I was helping protect the airline. They said he'd only take what he needed. No one would get hurt." John's voice was tight. "You betrayed me, Monica. You betrayed every person on this plane." Emily stepped beside him, key clenched in her fist. "You almost caused a crisis in the air." Monica sank to her knees, head bowed. Maria knelt next to her, softly touching her shoulder. "We can still fix this," Maria said. Then John returned to the cockpit to radio for ground security at Dallas, while Emily and Maria headed to the rear to lock down the cargo hold and recover any contraband. As Emily closed the heavy hatch behind her, the key spun in her hand one last time. The betrayal stung like fire in her chest, but she also felt something else. The solid weight of purpose, of fierce loyalty to everyone on board. She locked the door, securing John's aircraft as surely as she had pledged to secure her own integrity. And high above the clouds, Flight 407 pressed on, carrying its wounded crew and its shaken passengers toward an uncertain landing and toward the chance to heal what had been broken at 30,000 feet. Emily Hart's hands trembled as she secured the latch on the cargo hold. The low rumble of the engines felt heavier now, as if the plane itself carried the weight of her guilt and purpose. Behind her, Maria Santos stood alert, her fingers brushing lightly against the radio panel in case of another call from the cockpit. The narrow corridor smelled of oil and recycled air. Every sound, drip, thud, distant murmur, seemed magnified. Emily turned the key one last time, then locked eyes with Maria. "It's sealed," she whispered. Maria nodded, her dark braids swinging over one shoulder. "Let's go back." They crept up the aisle, past silent rows of passengers absorbed in in-flight movies or tense whispers. A toddler fussed too, rows ahead, straining against his mother's arms. Emily's chest tightened. She'd done this to protect them, but the thought of any harm still made her throat close. At the galley, John Mitchell awaited, jacket draped over one arm, voice calm but firm. "Ground security confirmed. They'll be ready at the ramp." His eyes flicked to Emily's. "Thank you." His gratitude shone through the fatigue lining his face. Emily forced a small smile, but her mind churned. They had stopped one breach, but what else lurked unseen? "You did well," Maria said quietly, stepping away so Emily could approach John alone. Behind them, Monica sat in a jump seat, head bowed, tears staining her cheeks. The muted light of the cabin lent her a ghostly pallor. Emily felt a pang of pity despite the betrayal. Monica had delivered her name badge and flight attendant welcome just hours ago. How quickly trust had shattered. John placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. He spoke to her, but his eyes searched the aisle, his voice tinged with worry. "Once we land, there will be questions. I want you at the front, helping passengers disembark. Keep your composure." He hesitated, as if weighing his next words. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I appreciate your courage." Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Understood." She straightened her shoulders and moved toward the cabin door. Each step felt deliberate, as if she were walking a tightrope between order and chaos. In the cabin, passengers stirred uneasily. The lights dimmed for landing, and Emily's voice rang out soothingly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be touching down shortly. Please return your seats to the upright position and secure any loose belongings." Her words hovered in the hush, offering calm. Behind her mask of professionalism, she felt something raw and vulnerable. A question whether she could keep everyone safe, including herself. As the wheels clanged against the runway and the plane shuddered, Emily glanced at Captain Mitchell through the cockpit window. He gave a small thumbs up, then turned back to his instruments. She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders uncoiling slightly. But the relief was fleeting. Monica's remorseful face swam to her mind, and Emily realized that trust, once broken, could never fully mend. The cabin filled with applause, polite but subdued. Emily moved into the aisle, distributing half-nods and reassuring smiles. Monica followed a few steps behind, silent and systematic, like a soldier delivering ration packs. Passengers shuffled off, gathering carry-ons, pulling on jackets. Emily caught snippets of conversation. "What happened? Someone tried to break in? Is everyone okay?" Her heart ached. She'd become part of someone else's story of fear. She helped an elderly couple with their bags, guiding them gently toward the exit. The man's hand trembled. His wife pressed her palm against his back, offering quiet comfort. Emily's voice softened. "Thank you for your patience. Please take your time." In their grateful smiles, she saw why she'd chosen this life. These small moments of kindness, of human connection. At the front door, the ground crew waited with flashing lights. Emily's phone buzzed, an automated alert that the essays were overdue. She silenced it, tapping it into her pocket. Tomorrow's deadlines could wait. Right now, lives and reputations hang in the balance. She directed the last passengers off. The cabin emptied until only flight attendants and crew remained. Monica stood near the galley door, hands clasped. Emily approached her, voice low. "Monica, once we've debriefed, you'll have to answer for what you did. But right now, are you okay?" Monica's gaze flickered, uncertainty and fear swirling in her eyes. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." Emily studied her colleague, searching for the woman who had laughed beside her that morning. That Emily no longer existed. Instead, a silent stranger trembled before her. Emily's heart softened, but duty edged in. "We all make mistakes," she said carefully, "but choices matter. Right now, you need to tell all you know to security." Monica nodded, tears falling freely now. "I will." Outside, the staircase hissed as it extended to the plane's door. Emily led the way, wind gusting cold air through the open threshold. Captain Mitchell descended just behind her, jacket flapping. He paused, glancing back inside as if saying goodbye to the trauma they'd shared. Emily watched his steady gait, his shoulders still bearing invisible scars. She admired his strength, but wondered how he bore it all without breaking. On the tarmac, security officers fanned out, moving toward Monica. Emily fell back, standing beside John. The hangar loomed nearby, its door shut tight. The night air smelled of diesel and summer grass. Emily's uniform fluttered in the breeze. The runway lights cast long shadows across the pavement, as though giants lay hidden just beyond sight. "Thank you, Emily," John said again, his voice weary. "For everything." He hesitated, then added, almost inaudibly, "I know this flight began as a simple run to Dallas for you." Emily met his eyes. It was never simple. Her words lingered between them, honest and raw. He nodded, understanding more than she'd said. "Go home, rest. We'll get through the after-action review tomorrow." She offered a tired smile. "Yes, sir." Then she paused, impulse rising. "Captain Mitchell, John, thank you for trusting me." His gaze warmed. "You've earned that trust, Emily Hart. Never forget it." With that, he turned toward the officers, answering their questions as they formed a small circle around Monica. Emily watched until Monica was led away, head bowed but shoulders unbroken. Then, as the last officer closed his notebook, she turned and strode toward the terminal. Each step felt heavy but determined. In the flashing lights of the runway, she recognized a new resolve taking shape inside her, to hone her vigilance, to honor her mistakes, to protect others with integrity. Inside the terminal, the buzz of passengers and announcements welcomed her back. She made her way through the automatic doors into the quiet hum of baggage claim. The overhead clocks glowed 8:15 p.m., just minutes past the time on that hidden boarding pass. Hangar 3 lay dark and deserted now, its conspiracy thwarted by a broken heart and a brave voice. Emily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was John's number lighting the screen. She answered, voice gentle. "Captain Mitchell?" His reply was soft, almost a murmur. "Report in tomorrow at 0900. Until then, good night, Flight Attendant Hart." She chuckled softly, her shoulders easing for the first time since dawn. "Good night, Captain Mitchell." As she walked toward the parking garage, her mind sifted through the day's events. The torn pass at gate C32, the vanished woman in row 17, Monica's secret note, the man with the briefcase, the cockpit key, the cargo hold, and finally, the harsh wind of the tarmac. Each twist had taught her something about trust, sacrifice, and the fragility of safety. She slid into her car and closed the door, the leather seat cool beneath her. The engine's purr awakened the garage's quiet. She glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Uniform still crisp, eyes bright and alert. Emily Hart had faced a storm in the sky. Emily Hart followed close behind. Her uniform jacket held tight around her against the chill that seeped in from the tarmac. Maria Santos stayed by the controls, her phone in hand, ready to call for backup at the first sign of trouble. Somewhere in the wavering light lay the answers they needed, and the danger they could not yet see. "Stay sharp," John whispered, voice low and steady. He lifted his flashlight, its beams slicing through the darkness to reveal rows of maintenance equipment and locked cabinets. Emily's heart pounded as she scanned the scene. She could feel every breath, her pulse echoing in her ears like distant thunder. In the corner, a lone figure moved, slender, hunched over a stack of boxes. "Monica," Emily hissed. Shock curdled her stomach when she recognized her former friend and colleague. Head bent, as though deep in thought. Monica's shoulders shook, either from cold or fear. It was hard to tell which. "Monica!" John's voice rang out firm. The woman froze, then whirled around. Her eyes were wide, haunted. In her hand, she clutched a small black pouch, the same one they had seized aboard the plane. Emily's breath caught. "Give it to us," she said, stepping forward. The pouch slipped from Monica's fingers and fell to the floor, with a soft thud. John kicked it away from balance, then moved to Monica's side. "Why are you here?" he demanded. His breath formed a white mist in the cold air. Monica swallowed hard. I thought I could fix it," she stammered. "They said if I helped Captain Rhodes get that key, they'd protect the airline from the inside. They promised I'd never have to worry about money again." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it would go this far." Emily set her jaw. "They used you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to do this." Monica's gaze dropped to her hands, trembling. John shone his light on the lock of a nearby cargo cabinet. The keyhole glinted, beckoning. "They lied," he said, "but now we find out what they were hiding." He produced the silver key from his coat pocket, still warm from Emily's touch, and inserted it. The lock clicked open. Inside the cabinet lay rows of small metal canisters, each stamped with a biohazard symbol. Emily sucked in a breath. "Biological agents," she whispered. "They planned to smuggle them on our next flight?" Monica's face went pale. Tears brimmed in her eyes. "They said it was harmless, just samples. But after I saw Captain Rhodes loading the crates, I knew it was dangerous." She glanced at the canisters with horror. "I tried to stop him, but he threatened my family." John stepped back, jaw clenched. "We have to secure these and call the authorities." He reached for his radio. Emily placed a hand on his arm. "Wait." She knelt next to a crate stamped, "Handle with care." Using the flashlight, she read the small print, "Weaponization Test Samples, Class 4. Her stomach churned. "This isn't just a cargo run. It's a weapon." John's eyes widened. "We need to move fast." He keyed his radio. "Ground security, this is Captain Mitchell. We have illegal bioagents in Hangar 3. Secure the area and send hazmat now." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Captain. Units en route." The static hummed in the silence that followed. Emily stood and turned to Monica. "Why didn't you tell us you were in danger?" Monica's eyes filled. "I was scared. I thought I could handle it." She blinked rapidly. "I never meant to put you all at risk." John placed a steady hand on Monica's shoulder. "You're going to be okay," he said, though his voice was tight. "Once security arrives, we'll make sure everyone is safe." Footsteps pounded on the concrete outside. Emily peered through a small window in the hangar doors. Red and blue lights danced across the glass as officers and hazmat teams surged in. The hush of the plane's cabin was far behind them now, replaced by the sharp beeps of radios and the thrum of heavy machinery. They stepped back as officers walked past in bright, yellow suits, carefully collecting the canisters and sealing them in containment units. One of the hazmat team leaders gave John a nod before ducking under yellow tape. Emily exhaled, relief and exhaustion in the same breath. She turned to John. His face was drawn but proud, lit by the harsh fluorescence. "You did the right thing," he said softly. She managed a tired smile. "We did it together." Her eyes flicked to Monica, who stood alone, head bowed. Emily moved to her side and offered a gentle hand on her arm. "It's over." Monica looked up, tears streaming. "I'm so sorry, Emily." Her voice was a broken whisper. "I betrayed you and everyone." She lowered her eyes. "I don't deserve forgiveness." Emily hesitated, then knelt to meet her eyes. "I believe you never wanted to hurt anyone. You made a choice under duress. We'll help you explain everything. But we also have to learn from this." John stepped closer. "The airline will handle the rest. But, Monica, you're coming forward to save lives. Don't forget that." Monica's shoulders shook with a sob. Emily placed a comforting arm around her. In that moment, the three of them, captain, flight attendant, and co-pilot, stood united in the bright, sterile hangar, bonded by betrayal and redemption. A week later, Emily Hart sat in the quiet of John Mitchell's office at the airline's headquarters. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the polished wood desk. Captain Mitchell offered her a mug of tea. She accepted with a grateful nod. Maria Santos and Monica sat on a couch to one side, Maria calm, Monica anxious. The meeting was with the head of security and a lawyer from corporate. Documents lay spread out before them. Reports on the bioagents, Monica's testimony, flight logs. The atmosphere was serious but tempered by relief. The security chief, a tall woman with sharp eyes, turned to Monica. "Your cooperation has been invaluable. The charges will be mitigated in light of your testimony and the danger you faced." Monica exhaled, relief flooding her features. Emily watched her friend, remembering each moment of the hangar confrontation. She felt pride and compassion, knowing how hard it had been for Monica to step forward. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Captain Mitchell, flight attendant Hart, your actions prevented a tragedy. The airline wishes to commend you both. Expect official recognition in next month's safety bulletin." John's shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. He smiled at Emily, who returned it warmly. Maria gave Emily a thumbs up under the table. When the meeting ended, the security chief stepped aside with Monica. John and Emily lingered. The office felt smaller now, crowded by the weight of what had happened and what they had overcome. John offered Emily a handshake. She took it, then surprised him by pulling him into a brief embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me." He hugged her back, firm and protective. "Always," he said. Outside the building, the late afternoon sky glowed with sunset hues. Emily and John walked across the courtyard, the hum of the city around them. They paused at a small fountain, water shimmering gold and rose in the dying light. Emily watched the ripples and thought of all the stories hidden beneath calm surfaces. A cracked boarding pass, a desperate prescription, a hidden key. She felt a quiet joy in having uncovered the truth, however painful. John broke the silence. "You know, Emily, people talk about heroes in the sky, but I think the real heroes wear uniforms like yours." He gestured to her crisp blue jacket. Emily laughed softly. "I just did my job." "No," he corrected gently. "You did something more." She looked up at him, heart full. "What now?" He smiled, a slow curve brightening his tired face. "Now, we return to the skies together. And remember what matters. Honesty, courage, and trust." Emily nodded. The golden light settled on her and on John, two figures bound by unexpected trials, ready to face whatever skies lay ahead. In that moment, she understood the moral she would always carry. That truth may shatter comfort, but it also forges the strongest wings. And with those wings, they would soar. The late afternoon sun slanted through the terminal's floor-to-ceiling windows as Emily Hart stepped out of the security office, her uniform jacket feeling lighter than it had in days. Monica walked beside her, shoulders straight, a tentative smile on her face. Maria Santos trailed a few steps behind, quietly observing the ebb and flow of passengers collecting luggage and saying goodbyes. Captain John Mitchell had gone ahead to attend a debriefing with airline executives. They had promised him answers about why the conspiracy reached so far into their own ranks. Emily paused at the automatic doors, inhaling the warm air scented with coffee and new carpeting. She thought of that morning in Boston, of the pale gold light on polished floors, and how little she had known of the storm brewing beneath. Now, the central conflict, yet the moral weight carried on Emily's shoulders, woven with relief, sorrow, and something deeper, a sense of responsibility that would not easily fade. She turned to Monica. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. Monica's eyes glistened. "Better," she said. "I told the security chief everything, the names, the hangar meetings, the threats against my family. They've assured me protection." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for standing by me." Emily inclined her head. "I'm proud of you. It took courage to come clean." Monica gave a small laugh, shaky but real. "I deserve to face the consequences. But you, Emily, you saved us all." A distant announcement crackled through the speakers. Flight 407 would now board from gate A12. Emily's heart gave a small lurch. Back on that flight, she had torn the wrong pass, then discovered the cabin key in someone's fists, then sealed the cargo hold against unseen threats. Each moment had demanded split-second choices, rooted in instinct, empathy, and the quiet conviction that behind every uniform was a human life. She found Maria beside a row of seats, engrossed in her phone. Maria looked up, her normally calm face more open than usual. "Emily," she said, "I just wanted to thank you again. She paused. "I know I'm normally behind the controls, but today I realized how much we all depend on each other." Emily smiled and patted her shoulder. "We make a good team." Monica joined them. "Are you okay to fly again?" she asked Maria. Maria considered. "Yes," she said after a moment. "I think I want to fly more now, knowing we can right wrongs together." As they walked toward gate A12, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Did you pick up milk?" She tapped a quick reply, promising to stop by the store on her way home. Even in the calm after the storm, the little everyday tasks waited. But Emily's mind was still aloft in the sky, sifting through the lessons of the day. At the gate, passengers lined up. Children clutched stuffed animals. Business travelers typed on laptops. Families chatted. Emily greeted them with her practiced smile, scanning passes, tearing along the perforation. She felt a quiet strength in her fingertips, a reminder that her simple actions could ripple outward, for better or worse. When she handed a boarding pass back to a tall man in a gray suit, he paused. "You're Emily Hart, right? From Flight 407. She raised an eyebrow. "That's me." He nodded. "Thank you. My daughter has asthma. I saw you help that woman with the fake prescription. You kept things calm, even when you had no idea what you were walking into." Emily's chest warmed. "I only did what anyone would do." He smiled. "Perhaps, but courage can hide behind any uniform." He moved on, and Emily lingered at the gate door. Behind her, Monica and Maria prepared their own stations. Emily watched her colleagues take up their roles, each one a vital thread in the tapestry of safety and service. Moments later, Captain Mitchell appeared, crisp and composed in his white shirt. He offered Emily a nod of respect and handed her a small envelope. "This came for you," he said quietly. She took it, glancing down at the gold-embossed logo of the Airline Safety Committee. Inside lay a letter of commendation, a formal acknowledgement of her vigilance, compassion, and quick thinking under pressure. Emily's breath caught at the carefully chosen words, for demonstrating exceptional courage in safeguarding passengers and crew, and for upholding the highest standards of integrity in the face of adversity. She looked up at John, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled, a quiet strength in his gaze. "The skies are safer because of you, Emily Hart." As the boarding call began, Emily stepped aside to gather her composure. Monica slipped next to her and offered a shy grin. "Congrats," she said softly. "You earned that." Emily looked at her friend, seeing the remorse, the resolution, and the promise of redemption in Monica's eyes. "We both did," she replied, slipping the letter into her pocket. Once all passengers were aboard, Emily took her place at the cabin entrance. The engines roared to life, and the plane rolled toward the runway. As they ascended, Emily felt a moment of vertigo, not fear of heights, but the dizzying realization that their actions had carried consequences both seen and unseen, rippling through lives. At cruising altitude, the overhead lights dimmed. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the intercom. "Thank you for choosing our airline. I'm Captain John Mitchell. We'll be entering clear skies shortly. On behalf of all the crew, we appreciate your trust and wish you a pleasant journey." Emily passed through the cabin, checking seat belts and offering water. She paused at row 12, where a small girl gazed out the window at the clouds below. The child's mother smiled at Emily. "We're so grateful," she murmured. "You make us feel safe up here." Emily crouched beside the girl. "The sky is beautiful when you know you're in good hands," she said gently. The child nodded seriously, as if committing a sacred truth to memory. Later, when the cabin quieted and most passengers slept or watched movies, Emily found a moment to retreat to the galley. She leaned against the bulkhead and closed her eyes, allowing the soft hum of the engines to lull her senses. The day's events drifted through her mind like dream fragments. The torn pass, the disappearing woman, the broken key, the loaded crates, the harsh wind of the tarmac. Each had tested her resolve, challenged her assumptions. She thought of her father, the sergeant who taught her about duty and honor, yet returned home scarred by wars no uniform could mend. She remembered his letters where he wrote of loyalty and sacrifice, but also of grief and regret. Emily had always believed that she would follow in his footsteps by serving others, yet today she saw how healing could come from small acts of kindness, from choosing truth over convenience, from forgiving a colleague who stumbled under pressure. Her reflection in the stainless steel panel showed a woman transformed. Eyes clearer, posture steadier, an undercurrent of compassion woven with determination. She realized that moral courage was not a single act, but a daily practice, an ongoing effort to do right, even when no one else was watching. A soft tap at the galley door made her start. It was Maria offering her a cup of tea. Emily accepted and sipped the warmth, letting it spread through her. The plane's lights glowed softly overhead, casting gentle pools of illumination. "Everything okay?" Maria asked. Emily nodded. "More than okay. I'm learning that integrity isn't just a policy. It's a choice we make again and again." Maria smiled. "I think you've earned that lesson and a break." Emily laughed softly. "Yes, I think I will." By the time Flight 407 touched down in Dallas, Emily felt a calm she had not known at dawn. The evening lights along the runway blurred into a ribbon of gold as the wheels kissed the ground. She guided passengers off with her steady kindness, the closing notes of the journey echoing not with fear, but with trust regained. When the last suitcase rolled down the carousel and the terminal's bustle quieted for the night, Emily walked alone to the car rental desk. She paused outside, looking up at the vast canopy of stars above the city. The night air was warm, pulsing with the promise of tomorrow. She thought of the hidden truths they had uncovered and the better world they had protected. She thought of Monica, standing stronger now that her secrets were laid bare. She thought of John Mitchell, whose unwavering support had anchored her faith in others. She thought of Maria, whose steady hands guided them through turbulence both literal and moral. Emily understood that the skies would never be entirely safe, storms would come, and secrets would fester in hidden corners. But she also knew that with honesty, compassion, and the courage to act, they could face whatever darkness hovered beyond the clouds. Sliding into the driver's seat of a rental car, she hummed a soft tune, a quiet celebration of survival and renewal. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. Tomorrow would bring essays to grade, grocery runs, mundane tasks woven into the tapestry of everyday life. But tonight, Emily Hart allowed herself a moment of reflection. Gratitude for the gift of truth, resolve to protect it, and hope for the journeys yet to come. With a final glance at the sky, she started the engine and drove into the night, carrying the lessons of Flight 407, its mistakes, and its triumphs into her tomorrow. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.